The stagecoach rumbled through the red dust of the Wyoming plains, its wheels screeching against the dry earth like a wounded beast. Inside sat a woman with trembling hands wrapped tightly around a faded carpet bag. Her name was Clara Wren, 26, widowed by a fever and running from a past she couldn't bury. Outside the window stretched miles of nothing but wind, rock, and silence. When the coach finally slowed before a weathered ranch house, her heart nearly stopped. The driver cracked his reins and called, "End of the line, ma'am." Iron Creek Ranch. Clara hesitated before stepping down, her boots sinking into the dust. The man waiting for her wasn't what she'd imagined. He leaned against a corral post, hat low, jaw shadowed with a day's stubble. His shirt sleeves were rolled to the elbows, revealing sun-browned arms roped with muscle. He didn't smile, just watched her, steady, quiet, like he was reading her without words. "Mrs. Wren?" he asked in a deep, slow drawl that seemed to hum through the dry air. She nodded, voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Mr. Holt. Name's Wade," he said, pushing away from the post and striding toward her. He stopped close enough that she could smell the faint scent of saddle leather and smoke. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Darlin." "I don't bite." His eyes glinted under the brim of his hat. "Unless you give me reason to." Clara's breath caught. She didn't know whether to be frightened or reassured. Wade turned toward the porch and said over his shoulder, "Come on, then. Sun's dropping. Coyotes don't take kindly to stragglers." The house was simple but sturdy, built by hand, every board showing the mark of labor. Inside, a stone hearth held the remains of a dying fire. Wade kicked it back to life and set a pot of coffee to heat. "Sit," he said. "You've had a long ride." She perched on the edge of a chair, her fingers still clutching her carpetbag like it was her only anchor. He watched her quietly, then said, "You're not what I expected." Her heart twisted. "Neither are you." That made him smile, a rare, crooked thing that looked more dangerous than kind. "You thought you'd be marrying some old rancher with a bad leg and one tooth." She looked away. "The agency said you needed a wife. I needed a home." He poured 2 mugs of coffee, slid one across the table. "Fair trade, I reckon." But when their fingers brushed, she flinched. Not because of him, but because of the ghosts that trailed her from Missouri. A husband who'd drunk himself to rage. Nights when she'd learned to fear the sound of boots on the floorboards. Wade noticed. He didn't press, just sat back and sipped his coffee. "You'll find no harm here, Mrs. Wren. I ain't that kind of man." She tried to smile, but her lips barely moved. "You say that now." He leaned forward, eyes steady on hers. "I say that always. The first night passed in uneasy quiet. Wade gave her the bedroom and took the porch, saying the night air helped him think. Clara couldn't sleep. The wind clawed at the shutters, and every creak made her heart race. She'd crossed half a country to start over, but fear traveled well. It unpacked itself easily. Just before dawn, she saw him through the window, sitting in a rocking chair with his rifle across his lap, eyes scanning the dark horizon. Guarding, watching. When she finally opened the door, he turned, surprised. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. "You were out here all night." He shrugged. "Coyotes get curious. Figured I'd keep him company." She smiled faintly, for the first time. Did they usually need guarding against? He studied her a long moment before answering, "Not always the 4-legged kind." Something in the way he said it made her blood chill. Days turned into weeks. Clara worked quietly, washing, mending, cooking what little there was. Wade spent his days breaking horses and riding the fence lines. Sometimes, he came home with his knuckles bloodied and his jaw tight. "Trouble?" she asked once. He didn't answer, just said, "Men out here get greedy when they see something worth talking." She didn't know if he meant land or her. One evening, a storm rolled in from the mountains, black and heavy. The wind tore at the barn doors, and the horses screamed. Clara ran outside to help, skirts whipping around her legs. She slipped in the mud, and Wade caught her, pulling her against his chest. "Damn fool," he muttered, brushing rain from her face. "You'll freeze." Her heart pounded against him. "I was trying to help." He looked down at her, rain dripping from his hat brim, his voice low. "You keep trying to do things that'll get you hurt. I'm not helpless. I never said you were." The storm raged around them, but for one breathless moment, she felt warmer than she had in years. His hand lingered at the small of her back before he stepped away. "Get inside, Clara," he said. "Before I forget, I'm a gentleman. .. That night, she couldn't shake the way he'd said her name, like he'd branded it into his memory. But she also couldn't forget the flicker she'd seen in his eyes. Something old, something painful. The next morning, 2 riders appeared on the ridge. Clara watched them from the window, heart pounding. Wade stiffened the moment he saw them. He went to the door, shotgun in hand. "Stay inside," he said. "Who are they?" "Men who think I owe them something." He walked out into the yard as the riders came down, faces shadowed beneath their hats. "Morning, Holt," one of them called. "Heard you finally brought yourself a wife." Wade's jaw tightened. "Ain't your concern." The other man spat in the dirt. "Everything out here's our concern. You owe us for them horses you took from Mason Creek." "I took what was stolen from me." "Maybe so," the man sneered. "But we figure you still owe a price." Clara's heart dropped as she saw the glint of a revolver at his hip. "Price is my lead," Wade said coldly. "Take your claim to hell." The men laughed, but it didn't reach their eyes. "We'll be back when you're not hiding behind your woman." When they rode off, Wade's shoulders sank. He turned slowly, saw Clara standing in the doorway. "You should have stayed inside," he said. "I was afraid they'd hurt you." He gave her a faint, crooked smile. "You think I'm that easy to hurt?" But later that night, she heard him in the barn, talking low to his horse, voice rough with anger. She crept closer and caught fragments. "They won't touch her, not again." Again, the word echoed in her mind until sleep wouldn't come. Days later, Wade didn't come home from the range. The sun set, then the moon rose, and still no sign of him. Clara waited by the window, every sound outside making her flinch. Then, hoofbeats, but it wasn't Wade. 2 shadows moved through the yard, lanterns glowing in their hands. Clara's heart seized. She ran to the trunk, pulled out Wade's spare revolver, and loaded it with shaking fingers. The door creaked open. Well, one of the men from before drawled. "Lukey here. She's all alone." Clara raised the gun, hands trembling. "Leave," he smirked. "Ain't no call to be unfriendly, Darlin. We just came to collect." She fired. The shot tore through the silence, shattering glass and sending the man sprawling backward. The other Kirsten lunged forward, but before he could reach her, the door exploded open behind him. Wade, his face was dark with fury, eyes blazing. He grabbed the man by the collar and slammed him against the wall so hard the boards cracked. "You lay a hand on her," he hissed, "and you'll never lift one again." The man reached for his weapon, too slow. Wade's gun roared once, and he fell. When it was over, Clara stood frozen, smoke curling in the air. Wade turned to her slowly, his shirt soaked with rain and blood. "You all right?" She nodded, but tears welled in her eyes. "You could have been killed." He stepped closer, wiping a streak of soot from her cheek. "You think I'd let them take what's mine?" Her breath caught. "Yours." He hesitated, then took her trembling hand. "Clara, I didn't send for a wife 'cause I was lonely. I sent for a reason to stop fightin'. You were that reason." She couldn't speak. He brushed her tears with his thumb, voice dropping low. "You're safe now. As long as I breathe, no one's gonna touch you. Not the past, not those bastards, not even the dark itself." Outside, the storm had broken again, rain pouring down like the heavens had finally wept for her. She leaned against him, her fear melting into something else, something fierce and fragile. "I wasn't running to you," she whispered. "I was running from everything else." He smiled faintly, resting his forehead against hers. "Then run no more. .. The next morning, the world smelled of wet earth and smoke. Wade buried the dead man near the ridge and came back without a word. Clara stood on the porch, waiting. When he finally reached her, she said quietly, "You risked your life for me." He took off his hat, eyes meeting hers. "Would again, every damn day." "You said you don't bite," she murmured. "Unless..." His smile was slow, dangerous. "Unless I find something worth bidding for." Her laugh came out shaky but real. "And did you?" He stepped closer until she felt the warmth of his breath. "You already know the answer." Then he kissed her, gentle at first, then with the kind of hunger that made her forget the miles she'd traveled, the fear she'd carried, the ghosts that had chased her across half a country. When the wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain and wild sage, Clara knew she'd found her home. Not in the ranch, not in the land, but in the man who had waited in silence, guarding her long before she ever arrived. And from that day on, the plains were quiet again. The coyotes kept their distance. The ghosts didn't dare follow. Because at Iron Creek Ranch, a woman who'd once known only fear had found something stronger, something that could outlast even the wildest storm. Wade Holt had promised her safety, and for the rest of their days, he kept that promise, with love, with steel, and with every heartbeat that still dared to fight for her.